Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Overland Bonfire. We had a little bit of a show name, so we're now called the Overland Bonfire.
Yeah.
Uh,
Brought to you by Blue Ridge Overland Gear.
Blue Overland Gary, the man, the myth, the legend,
Yeah.
Matt
Oh, I
is
see.
here joining us
Yeah.
on the left here.
I am here.
I'm CT.
I'm Rick.
Um,
I've already been
yeah.
introduced.
So
That
this
should
is
be-
a show about overlanding, camping in the woods, and
complete
have-
randomness.
and complete randomness
Yeah.
and
All
lots
right.
of tangents. So let's
so
jump
what
right
do we
in.
got today?
Well, we just made a promise to our editor we wouldn't talk about food today. But I just realized that I think it is important to talk about food in this episode. So I'm gonna miss Z. He's a good kid. So we're going to talk about a question that we see a lot online, and maybe like a preconceived notion a little bit about like, is overlanding inherently expensive? And well, it can be. I think that all of us have got some experience about how you can, overland, which we may need to take a moment to talk about our definition of that, because there's some variance there too. And then how we do it without exactly, blowing the bank up. So.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it tends to be a rich man's game, and so it definitely gets
I think
that
I think
image.
that's way more the perception than the reality.
Yeah,
I think that
Yeah,
I think that,
perception-wise,
that
100%.
people for sure believe that you have to be financially independent
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to do it and do it well. And honestly, you can buy all kinds, and I love cool stuff. So I'm not I don't.
You're as guilty as the next guy.
No, I probably, but I'm not anti cool stuff, and I'm not, like I don't begrudge the guys that have like
Yeah.
super awesome rigs, and
I want the super awesome rig.
yeah, I look at them and I just, the problem is they don't actually fit into what I need, so most of the time I'm not like, I don't look at one and go, oh man, I wish I had that, like
Yeah.
because it just doesn't kind of fit my requirements for a vehicle.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, so talking about like doing it on a budget, like we just did a ride this last weekend. I slept on an X-Ped on the gravel beside my truck with a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
No tent.
No tent. A little bit. Light rain. I slid underneath the truck.
Yeah.
I slid partway underneath the truck to stay out of the rain.
That goes back to our conversation on how soft have we got. The answer is Matt's not really that soft.
That's super comfortable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that X-Ped is like, but I mean, you're talking,
Yeah.
that's a $400 sleeping.
Yeah.
That also translates into, it moves into a tent, it moves into whatever.
Yeah.
And I had, well, I do have a fridge in my console, so there is that. But short
that
of,
has nothing to do with overlanding.
no, it really doesn't. It
If
totally
Matt
doesn't.
never went camping again, he'd still have a console. and a
100%,
fridge.
no, 100%.
Yeah.
You're right. I would. But short of that, for me, it's food. Some, you can get away with a lot of things clothing wise. Most of that for me, like clothing and gear that I take is a value based prop, right? So if I can get something that's gonna last, if I, this jacket is, I don't even know how old,
Loved.
right? It's yeah. Like I wear it constantly. I work and I do all kinds of things in this
It was
jacket.
worth the money for sure.
Well, it's at least 6 or 7 years old, and it's honestly disgusting, probably, and it still wakes up every day and keeps me warm. So I just haven't, I bought one good piece of equipment, and hopefully I get a decade out of it. And I have sleeping bags like that. Hopefully my X-Ped works like that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have to have a lot of equipment
Yeah.
at that point. It's like, I've just kind of said, okay, I'm going to commit to the violence. I have one really good rain jacket.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I paid way more than most people would for a rain jacket, and
Right.
my plan is amortize that over 10 years. It's 15 years. It's probably not that expensive.
Yeah. And so I think things you need, you need shelter, you need a vehicle, which we can dive into that in a minute, and then food, and then like relatively.
Or you can be CT and you can just bum rides.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, bum rides. And,
You don't even need a vehicle.
Yeah. And you could be all of us and just make sure you go on trips with people with food. And,
Right.
Yeah.
And with a winch,
Yeah.
Food.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No food.
Strike two.
Strike.
So I think about the vehicles, because obviously overlanding goes hand in hand with the vehicle. And up until just over a year ago, I had a Toyota Tacoma, which I know, right, not the cheapest vehicle you could buy. 2001, that when I traded it in, had 265,000 miles. I bought it for like $11,000, I think.
Yeah.
And over the course of 150,000 plus miles, I did do suspension bumper, and like originally was just sleeping in the bed, but had a rooftop tent that actually a buddy of mine still has a CVT, one of their kind of like more base models. And outside of that, there was like no major investment.
But I mean, you're talking that was your DD,
Yeah. Oh,
right? So that was your daily driver. You drove to work every day. You took it in the woods, and it's not like you didn't have $1 million in suspension. Like
no.
we put half of that on an old man emu system or something.
Yeah.
That was an economical bumper was just a pretty normal bumper. And
Yeah, an ARB bumper and the old man emu and some sliders, and I was gifted a snorkel. Father-in-law bought me a snorkel. He was like, "This will look cool." I was like, "All right."
Yeah. So in the grand scheme of things, the reality is your investment, like your base investment, was counting the daily driver was $15,000 or less.
Oh yeah, and I mean I drove it every single day for, God, I don't know, 7-8 years, something like that. Yeah, and I mean there was like a 3-month period where we were in Arizona in May and in Maine in July. So like really, taking some trips where you wanted a dependable vehicle and never thought twice. And honestly, it was no more trouble than my current truck is. Like my couple-year-old, ZR2 has got like a weird thermostat. It thinks the coolant's low, the coolant's not low situation going on. So,
Yeah.
I just don't want people to think you get a brand new vehicle, you get a new vehicle, that they work perfectly. Because if you use them hard, like some gremlins are going to shake out,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, you figure, like I said, you got a DD and in your scenario with lift and tires and a tent,
Yeah.
sleeping bag and a cooler, you're going for, really a pretty minimal amount of money. And that's you're even talking about a rooftop tent. You're probably in it $4,000 or $5,000 total.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be done all at once, and then vehicle wise, I mean, let's be real. Like, a Subaru Forester on ATs will get you a
lot of
flipping
places.
way.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of places.
We like to tell people that I don't know what percentage we use, but 90+% of the places that you might want to go, you can get to in a pretty regular vehicle.
Oh, I mean,
like most of the places you end up camping, driving highways and going to campsites in the cool places.
I mean,
and
even
a little bit off the beaten tracks.
No, Sean, my buddy from Montana, who's spends his life in the woods, like all of it, and it is 50, right? Has been doing this for literally has a 1990 Suburban that he bought in like 1994.
Nice.
2-wheel drive, put a locker in it.
Yeah.
It's 450,000 miles on this truck.
Dude.
And like he camps in the back of it. He sleeps in the back of it. He built a roof rack for it. Sometimes he sleeps on top of it. Like I don't think he's taken a tent with him in years.
I think his trip to the grocery store in winter is probably a more adventurous excursion than our average trip.
Oh yeah. No, it takes right. Yeah. No. I mean,
my example, not to discount our trail ride we did at New Year's Eve, but like Brandy's Subaru Crosstrek that is not lifted or anything. Maybe not the speed that I was carrying in the ZR2, but like I would take her Crosstrek on that 60-mile loop that we did on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
With no second thoughts,
Yeah.
It's gravel.
From there on out, it just
worst,
becomes about how much comfort you want to have. And,
and
how much comfort you need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, I sleep fine. The X-Ped is the kicker for me sleeping fine. I'll be honest with you. Like that's the one thing that makes the difference because with that, as long as it's and you're halfway, it doesn't even have to be
halfway. X-Ped is an air
flat.
mattress, by the way.
Really nice ones, and they come with repair kits, and they're not for the ultralight crowd. They are designed for comfort.
Yeah,
but I mean, you could you threw it on the gravel. You could also be in a Coleman tent. You use it in your Gazelle tent. I mean, if somebody crashes at your house, you could throw it on the floor and they could sleep really comfortably.
Yeah. And it's not really that big. I mean, obviously you're right. It's not a backpacking kind of thing, but for sure for most stuff you do. And then so going back to the what the overlanding was that the other what are
kind of
defining that at one point? Is that
that's sorry, we did totally skip over that. So, I look at it as vehicle dependent because the vehicle's involved, off-road, and that doesn't mean like bounce buggy rock crawling, but you're mostly off highway, and here in the East you got to be on pavement some travel, where like the idea is more about like the journey as a whole, not just going to a spot. Like it's for me it's usually more about like exploration. If we see something cool, we're going to stop. It's not like I'm hauling butt, to get somewhere and then set up camp and spend 3 days. It's more continuous journey.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think the other thing for me is like so much of my vehicles are used, and even my gear is used for something else. Like it's not like, it's not even just like, okay, we're traveling to insert whatever we're going to do at that. I mean, you fish so much that like half the time your vehicle is really just transportation to be able to fly fish.
Right? I've literally caught like a really good trout, and it's rare. I only keep stalkers if anybody cares. I usually release any wild fish. But anyway, catch a really good stalker and be like, oh, this is going on the grill. Open the truck, turn the fridge on, throw it in the little tray in the top of the fridge and take it home. So yeah.
No, but I mean, like, you start thinking about really it's, for me, even all my gear is based around am I travel? I mean, we sometimes travel just to travel, and that's a reality. But most of the time, it's traveling to do something, and we're just making the trip part of that adventure, part of that deal. And I think there's way more of that out there. There's way more guys that are mountain biking and camping out of the truck, and so they're just using the vehicle to get a little deeper into the woods, to be able to fish, to be able to mountain bike, to be able to whatever it is that you're
climb
into.
Some crags.
And
Climb whatever you're into.
And not just the vehicle, but the gear. And I will say that's where maybe the more expensive side of things, the convenience factor. So like, you have a fridge, you don't have to worry about ice. You can take more food in a smaller package because you don't have to worry about ice. And even like the tents, I've got a rooftop tent now. I've had a pop top camper, like fly fishing, mountain biking, whatever, or the Gazelle is kind of outside of that equation, but versus putting up a ground tent, I just pull in, open the latches, push it up, and it's good. Now I can get to go, get on the water and get some hours in, before the end of the day. So,
and I think about things like a pretty big add-on to a vehicle, a pretty big build out would be like a shower system, like the stall, a hot water system, all that. It's like you look at the cost of all of that versus a YMCA membership, and it's like,
oh yeah,
it's all a matter of like, of degrees of what do you really need, how long are you going out for, and but like.
We just got a geyser shower, and I know like showers have been really popular, like shower stalls and overlanding, but like that's the same thing. We did a pretty long trip a few years ago, and after a couple of days of like in the woods, like, oh, we need a shower. Let's hit one night at this state park. Had a nice spot on the lake.
We totally do that.
Yeah,
100%.
We do that. We run on a 4-day rotator for the fourth night we're someplace, because usually we're going to do long. We normally don't pack enough clothes to get through.
Yeah,
if we're out for 2 weeks or something.
That's one thing I like about out west. I think about a trip in Arizona where we did laundry like in the shower at a state park. Yeah. And in like 20 minutes everything was dry.
Right, yeah.
And I tried that on a trip in Georgia.
Not the same.
And I brought back wet stuff. Like like after the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
100%.
So let's real quick talk about, I think we've established it doesn't have to be expensive. The expense kind of comes with convenience, a little bit of like IG clout. Oh, and you said something Matt I wanted to touch on earlier. Sorry. I think, the perception it's really expensive because maybe those are the people who are just like bragging it up. They want to show off their cool stuff, and nothing wrong with that. We get that.
No, we love that. I mean, I love cool stuff. I'm like, that's my problem is I love cool stuff, and the reality is I don't necessarily. I mean, I keep a camp stove and I keep a whatever, and that's kind of the other thing too is like if you're kind of committed to it, or like going back to when I look at a fridge, I sort of look at that offsets its cost in eating lunch out at work or getting ice for the cooler, or because it's like even when I'm doing stuff with kids, man, my fridge is just full of whatever we need, as far as so we're not buying from the concession stand if we're if nor is it a rope and we're not necessarily buying food from the concession stand.
Because the $6 hot dogs that are
right, it doesn't exist because we've got, hey, grab a sandwich out of the fridge, or the drink that you like is already in there. So it's like I can. Most of the things I sort of look at like, well, in the long term, I'm going to be able to. So if you're trying to sell this to your wife, that's the key. We're we're reducing your long-term costs. So it's just helping you out here. Just saying, if you're
the wife factor definitely does ratchet up the requirements, I guess, of a build. Depends on who your wife is.
Yeah. But, so I'd say, I think Brandy likes us having a fridge more when we're like in Lynchburg and she wants to go hit a grocery store we may not have access to here. And instead of like, oh crap, now we have to come back home because there's, meat or, whatever. Just, all right, throw it in the fridge and then finish your day in Lynchburg. And then you get home and the meat's still frozen.
You're saying as far as like
the comfort level.
The comfort level to offset for said spouse.
She's like,
of
oh,
some kind.
I need a shower. I need my mattress to be like this. And I
think that's your issue.
Yeah, that may just be my.
Yeah, Brandy and I come from like backpacking. Like when we met, she worked at an outfitter, and we still will just like crack out the hammock setups like on trips, and we still do backpacking only trips and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, if it's gonna be really crappy, and Liz doesn't want to go, she's she doesn't go. If she wants to come, great. And anyway, so it's I'm not running into that problem. I mean, I occasionally will get I will occasionally get a request from the kids, depending on the. It'd be really nice if we could bring whatever.
Yeah. For us, it's a nice sleeping bag, and we were going back to like expensive. So like when I had a 20-year-old Tacoma and I was sleeping in the bed, I was still in a nice sleeping bag. Like I feel like that's a mistake. If you make it once, that should be enough of buying a cheap sleeping gear. Because I had, even it was a Mountain Hardwear bag, but it was a budget one. And after like 4 or 5 years, I felt like there should be a little screen on the temperature rating that just kept getting warmer.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know, man. Either I've really wimped out, or this is no longer a 30-degree bag.
So no, 100%. But like I said, that's why if you can buy good gear and buy it once, and use it, and don't get hooked into the next shiny thing, which is easy to do, man. I totally get it because I want a geyser shower really bad.
You just borrow mine. It's not been out of the box. We've had it for 4 months.
Right. So that's my problem, right? Like I would get that, and there's like 4 times a year I go, man, I could really use that.
Yeah, actually, we got that for dishes because we try to pack very minimally because kitchen, I think, is a place that's really easy to overpack. So we try to go really minimal, like one skillet.
Does this count as food? Or
no, I'm not going to talk.
We
gear.
We cross the line.
We try to take like a plate for each person, so we don't have a bunch of trash from disposables, and like one skillet, and then we either use the skillet on some type of stove. So I really think the geyser is awesome for washing dishes because like washing dishes in the backcountry is always kind of a like.
I'm totally gonna go to the food thing. I can't stop myself, but I will tell you that I take a plate, a cup, a knife, a fork, and then I pretend that there's a skillet that's usable in there in case I like actually need to cook something, and then I go eat off everybody else.
Georgia Bushcraft. Shout out to those guys. We actually forgot a skillet, but that's one of the few events of the year. There was a dude that was a dealer for like vintage cast irons. We got a really nice skillet for like $30. It was like really glad it was this trip where we forgot something to cook on.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
So we've kind of talked about tents, kitchen gear, fridges. What, Matt, for you to have a rig, okay, what would be the minimum you would like go on an overland trip, within that definition? What would your requirements be? Because we talked about like Sean's 2-wheel drive Blazer that's locked. Kind of what's the bare minimum for
gasoline?
Well, yeah, Matt requires a certain size engine to go.
I know it's not really. I mean, I've had 80 series and there's no motor to that. Okay, so what's like my minimum requirement?
Yeah. Like, would you go overlanding in a Camry, or would you rather it be the Subaru?
Dude, if it was like a cheap Camry, absolutely. The terrible things I would do to that.
That's a different conversation. Yeah.
Okay. So
non-expendable Camry. I guess we should qualify.
Yeah.
I mean, if I wouldn't go in a 2022 or something. I mean,
Where would you want your daily driver to be to take it overlanding? Because maybe somebody getting into it that just want to try out. I want to go on an overlanding trip.
Oh, I like what's the RAV, like Toyota RAV4, I think is a flippin' awesome little vehicle for, 30 some odd mile to gallon. I think the hybrid edition gets 38 or something crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would, if you wanted to put a tent on the roof, it would take it, put some ATs on it.
I don't know the specifics, but I bet if you didn't want to, you could probably drop the seats in that sucker and throw some nice mattresses in the back. Drop down the back seats.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, it's big enough that I could get a Gazelle in it or put a tent on the roof of it.
Yeah.
And get some gear in it and probably stuff a fridge in the back because that would be a requirement for me.
Yeah.
Camp stove and away you go. And probably still fit 3 people in it if you wanted to reasonably comfortably. Something in that size. I've not spent much time in a cross track, but I would assume like the Subaru, some of the Subaru stuff. I mean, Cam just got a Mazda that.
It's all-wheel drive.
With some ATs and a little messing around. It's not. I don't. When I say messing around, I probably wouldn't do a ton to it. And as long as you're careful with it, you don't think stupid. And if it gets too ugly, you're just willing to turn back.
And you brought Jeeps. for many years too, right?
Oh, I've had so many Jeeps. I don't even want to.
I think the
can't even
term
go into that conversation.
I kind of don't like it, soft roading, because we're going to talk in another episode about like off roading versus overlanding, because they are different, and some people dabble in a little bit of both.
Sure,
but to go overlanding, you don't need like MTs with a 5-inch lift.
To enjoy a trip that is in the woods and sort of off grid and getting away from people, which is what or is getting to some place to execute against your next adventure. Like I said, you're going to go fishing, you're going to go bike, you're going to go climb, you're going to whatever it is. No, I mean that's not that. The vehicle that you're running every day is easily can support that.
Yeah.
At one point I'd like to make is like a big we've said this before, but a big misnomer is like we throw on this off road, and it's like realistically that just means on trails.
Yeah.
It's you're not actually not only do we not condone going off trail when you're on a trail, you don't.
And even when we say trail, we're talking about, especially around here, like forest roads. We have a few like designated Jeep trails around here, but most of those are like out and backs. Like they're not like part of a larger system.
Yeah.
So if you're on a trip, you could go hit Potts Mountain, but like you're not going to be on a trip and be unable to avoid Potts Mountain. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. And you can spend 2-3 days, 4 days, regionally here.
Yeah.
On gravel, probably 70% of the time or more.
And I don't even want people to think it's boring. Like, we took some folks up Overstreet Creek a couple weeks ago. We had some people stay here at the shop recently. And that is a forest road, but man, it's got some exposure. And like, I wouldn't want to come down it nice. Like,
Yeah.
So you can still get an excitement factor.
It's pretty cool scenery. A lot of, and like, again, you're passing some stuff. There's some fishing along the way there.
Yeah.
Especially you head just a touch east of that.
One thing though, we talked about like you can get by with whatever tent or just sleep on top of, or inside of your vehicle.
Right.
Like a fridge is nice. I have done trips with just a cooler, and maybe have got tired of the hassle, but like it's not the getting ice that bothers me, it's the soggy food,
Well, that is all part of the process.
Yeah. For cooking, you can get by with as much or as little as you want to. Like we've literally run with just like a single Primus burner.
Yeah.
We've got the Primus 2 burner that we use now. I have got a Coleman, like not a new fancy Coleman, a really old Coleman stove I've used. One place I don't think you should skimp though is first aid kit. And then some like emergency supplies in terms of like, you need to have
road flares.
Road flares. That's the
road flares are a priority.
Yeah.
If you talk about road flares in every video too, Z, would you go back and check on that?
Yeah. Have a good first aid kit, have some emergency stuff. And I know there's some conflicting opinions about traction platforms, but I will say, like, when we take the Subaru out, we throw a couple on there because the Crosstrek doesn't have a winch. And they did get me on a photo shoot. I was doing my job and didn't see a hole and got in the hole. And it very much required those and the right foot strategy to get out of said hole. Yeah.
I don't believe you, but
there's no evidence for a really good reason. Yeah. I did not document that recovery. But so that way, if you do drive off the edge of the forest road, or I think about like Sheep's Creek, which occasionally goes from like totally fine to holy crap.
Yeah.
Having something that can get you through that 10-foot span. And then a willingness to turn around. Like, if you're just trying it out, there is no reason to bounce buggy your Camry.
I hate turning around.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me at all. I'll turn around and go back. I don't even care. But I'm just out boogling around. You know what I mean? Anyway, that, like I said, unless I have a specific destination I'm trying to get to, and it's like, no, I'm clear at the end.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's a gate, and then I'm like, shit.
I will never forget a trip with Jason from MSO, the first trip I ever went on with him. And we were up in West Virginia. And there was like a 16 or 18 mile section of forest road, and it was supposed to be like this. It might have been like a WMA or something, because the sign more or less was like, if the gate's open here, it's open on the other end.
Yeah.
And we drove all the way through, and the gate was closed. And so we had to go back. So okay, now instead of a 16 mile, it's like 30. Go around that, and then literally popped out on a road that was like 50 yards from that gate. Like we could see where we needed to be from the gate.
Yeah. That happens a lot.
I think about that trip we were on in West Virginia, and they're like, we finally cut that tree down, that tree that was blocking the road, got the tree out of the way, and they're like, oh, there's a giant rock up just a little bit further, so we had to turn around after all of that.
Oh, is that when you guys got that massive tree?
Yeah, the massive tree.
And
so I was on our way out, I was thinking
4 foot thick. It was crazy.
It was nuts. But I was thinking to myself, oh man, how do we get like a rock drill and some dynamite? I don't want to be stopped by a rock. Like,
so that trail had taken some damage from the storm, but
a willingness to turn around. But yeah, so it doesn't have to be. And then I think the deciding factor for as expensive is like prioritize. Like, did you really hate setting up your Coleman or whatever car camping tent because it took 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, then maybe look at a Gazelle and wait till they go on sale because they run sales like all the time.
Yeah, it even comes down to like our gear. It's like, can you store everything in big stacks of Sterilite plastic bins? Yes, but that gets annoying.
It goes back to convenience. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah, we make
it does
easier.
Go back to convenience. The other thing too, I think, is I look at, I don't count talking about like first aid kit or whatever, fire extinguisher or road flares. I don't count those as like
overlanding gear.
Right. No, that's daily gear, right? Yeah. Like first aid kit and all that stuff. That's going to go in every vehicle. Like, Laurel's Touareg. First thing it got were road flares, a first aid kit, and a fire extinguisher. Yeah. Now, she's not putting that in the woods necessarily. Yeah. I mean, that's just the things it should have.
Yeah, and it's like acceptable tools too.
Yeah, that's right. She has a small amount of tools, so she needs to find the battery, she needs to jump it, she needs whatever. I mean, she has tire puncture kit, tire plug kit, and knows how to use it. So those of you who own those kits and don't know how to use them, please.
I will say
that find a video on that,
and and teach your kids, man. Yeah. Like a plug kit's the easiest thing in the world to use, right? Like it's just stupid simple, and like I don't know, she's plugged 2 tires, one of her own and one on something of ours, like on the road where like, oh crap, it's got a leak, it's flat. Oh wait, here it is. Pull the nail out, plug the tire. I have a little DeWalt, inexpensive portable DeWalt compressor that her Touareg happens to have a compressor on it at the time, but so she could plug in and pump it up. But she's absolutely just plugged one, not put on the spare, and drove it and got it patched.
That is one of my favorite reasons to have a lifted vehicle. And it goes back to convenience and maybe a little laziness, because I love that on my truck I could always plug it like on the truck. Yeah. And then Brandy got a flat. I was like at the house, and I maybe spent an unreasonable amount of time trying to
plug it.
In fact, I was like, I could just take the wheel off, and maybe that's what you do with a Subaru. When you can't get your whole head inside the the wheel well. Yeah, that was like a moment of like clarity. It was like, oh yeah, that is why people usually do this. Like, yeah,
right. But anyway, I mean, like I said, I think that's the kind of vehicle you should take. That's the kind of equipment you should be taking with you, just for everyday life, not as an overlanding whatever. And that's because that's why I see a lot of our gear is it's relative to it's functional for everyday life. Because if it wasn't functional for everyday life, I wouldn't be that into it, because it's becomes
too much money to tie up in it.
Well, it's too specific. Like I mean, I have like the geyser shower is kind of an interesting piece. But it's a very specific piece. So it takes me a few minutes to buy something like that, because my uses my use number just isn't there. Where if I have something where I'm like, either it's like a first aid kit, hoping I don't have to use it, but I want to have it. Or fire extinguisher kind of checks that box, or it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use this thing every day. Like the fridge isn't for me is an easy one, because I'm going to use that 4 times a week. Okay. Oh. And even a stove is not a hard one for me usually. Yeah. Taking a little small stove in the truck, because
like MSR wind burner or something.
Yeah.
Anything, because it's like we were at a roping the other night, and I was like, and didn't have my stove, which really, because I'm kind of moving, and still in between vehicles, so I ain't packed well. Anyway, and I was like, oh, my stove is in the Suburban, and I really want some coffee, because it's effing cold out here, and like I've got everything I need to make coffee except a heat source, and I was just anyway, things like that where I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this a few times a month, or I'm going to use it kind of regularly, just in my daily life, then I'm all in. I don't even count as like, it's not specialty gear at that point. It's just part of my regular kit.
That all falls into preparedness for us, even down to the stove. Like, I don't keep one in the truck full time, but in the winter we keep what's the company that makes the canister type ones that are all
Jetboil?
It's a Primus. Primus had a Jetboil alike. Actually, when Jetboil was brand new, there's a cool story about that. Like, Primus built the burners for the very first run of Jetboils, and then Jetboil partway through the deal was like, we don't need those, and Primus was like, or then we're just going to build a stove around them. Etta Solo or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, we keep that in the vehicle, like even on like, interstate trips back home to, down to Tennessee to see family in the winter. That way we get stuck on the interstate. We're going to crack open like a Mountain House meal or something.
Yeah,
and have a nice warm meal, that kind of thing. So, yeah. 100%.
No, I like I said, consider a lot of that daily gear.
I think that's why my bra gear never comes out of the truck either. Like I brought a first aid kit in the shop the other day, and Cam was like, "Holy crap, that's old!" And I was like, I didn't even realize it because it was in the Tacoma practically the whole time I had it. Now it's in the ZR2.
It just can't get moved over.
And it just lives there. Like fire extinguisher, my mule bag has jumper cables, air compressor.
Yeah.
The tool roll is my truck tools. Like that bra gear lives in the truck in a cubby on the seat somewhere.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. No, I'm very much the same way. There's some things that just stay in my truck constantly, and there's always a strap in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So to kind of summarize, I think what we're trying to say is it depends.
Yeah. Like,
well, I mean,
the comfort level
I think
target.
the kicker is that no, it doesn't have to cost a ton of money, and there's, and it doesn't have to be spent all at once, and it doesn't have to, buy a couple good pieces of kit and
get out a lot.
Yeah,
and
I'd rather have you buy less gear and go out more.
Yeah.
And spend more money on gas than buy more gear and not go out.
You'll make smarter decisions on the gear because it'll fit you
and
it'll fit your type of trips.
And your life will suck less.
Yeah,
and I'd rather have that than I would.
I read somewhere that one of the best ways to like try overlanding was to take your backpacking stuff and put it in your backpack, and then just put the backpack in the back of the vehicle and go. Yeah. Because you should have everything you need for backpacking.
Right.
And then you should have that emergency stuff in your vehicle. So that's all you really need. Yeah.
Right. You've checked most of the boxes already.
Yeah. And I will say that maybe a big part for the beginners, you're like, okay, it doesn't have to be expensive. Just real quickly, we did a video on like how to find places to go overlanding. That's the kicker. Like, get on, some good maps that are kind of maybe like off-road specific, Onyx off-road. There's a lot of Facebook and, regional Facebook forums.
Choose an area without a lot of information about it, because then you get to explore,
Well, yeah. If you're cool with that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you're like, okay, where do I
comfort
go?
levels. Yeah.
So we got a good video on that, and there's a lot of good resources out there. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, we got anything else fun, or we're feeling good?
No. Cool. Now I think next we're going to tackle overlanding, off-roading. Are they the same thing, and why is that not true? A 16-part series.
And on whatever we choose, Gabby would fight you.
Yeah.
More and that and so much more next week on the Overland Bonfire.
2 weeks.
Well, it's 2 weeks. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Bye.
What do we got today?
Well, we just made a promise to our editor we wouldn't talk about food today. But I just realized that I think it is important to talk about food in this episode. So I'm gonna miss Z. He's a good kid.